TBC beta, TBC beta. It's finally here. Thank God. We've been waiting.
Dude, I was worried that it wasn't gonna come for a while,
Well,
and then
I kind of I talked about this earlier, I think, but I this happened with Classic where they kind of released it really early, and I think it got people hyped, and then the beta cycle just kept going. Like it went on for a long time. I don't remember again. I don't remember the exact amount of months, but people were streaming it for a good 4 or 5 plus months. They legit had a whole like dueling tournament on the beta between like streamers and stuff because it was just taking that long for Classic. And
well, I think with Classic it was a lot more to work through
yeah,
for
because it was
them.
the first time. It's older content than TBC is, so there's more likely stuff to like have to what's the word?
And then from what I remember, they didn't have like the actual like files of Classic anymore because of how old it
No, they
was, but they
no
did have
no they
TBC.
did. No, they 100% had to have had old things. The only reason they like talked with the Nostalrius people and whatever is because I think they just wanted, help in doing that because the Nostalrius people most likely knew more than what Blizzard like did at the time on how to, run it properly because obviously Nostalrius had to be doing something right. So that's the only reason.
For so many people to be
Yeah,
there. Yeah.
Blizzard. I'm pretty sure Blizzard had like copies of Classic. It's just like, it's a matter of like finding them, making sure they're like good and whatever, um, and solid.
Okay.
I don't exactly know how it works, so I'm not gonna pretend like I know,
Yeah, I don't know either. So
but the yeah, I would suspect that this beta cycle is still gonna be like that though. I don't think it's gonna be like in 2 months it comes out. Maybe I've seen people say it comes out in May, which would be kind of scary. That's a bit. I think that's a bit too soon, personally. Um,
I could see I could see earliest June. I think I think it would be wrong of them to give such a short notice. I mean, I know it's 2 months, but I feel like for a lot of people who might want to come back just for TBC and might want to prepare a little more for that, I think if they give them, 3, 4 months to be like, hey, this is release date, I think it'll work out a little better in Blizzard's favor that way. But May would be, like you said, May would be pretty scary for it to just be thrown
I mean,
upon
really,
us.
it'd be scary for us because we're not. I'm gonna say it. We're not prepared, but um, I
I'm not happy with you.
but I think for a majority of people who've been playing Classic for a long time, it might be something that people are looking forward to. Like obviously the super hardcore people are probably going to be into it, but people like us who aren't the most interested in Classic, I'll say, um,
You mean
I
you?
mean you aren't either. Really, to be fair, you don't play it relentlessly every single day and like are fully geared on. No, you don't.
Yeah.
So,
No, you're right.
um, it is a little bit daunting for us, and I would imagine that's most of the player base. I don't imagine that many people are like finished with Nax and like are just ready and waiting for TBC to come out because they're just done with Classic. I think most people are just waiting for TBC because they enjoy TBC more or that's when they start playing or whatever. Um, so getting prepped for that again, if it comes out in 2 months, that's really scary. We really got to push it on this whole leveling characters thing. I still need to figure out what
Yeah.
I want to do. Um, but I think I have a pretty good idea. I know you do. You're not gonna change.
No, no, I'm not switching
Yeah,
off of Mage.
yeah. The-
After seeing what we could do on a
It's
private server
it's
with even just in PvP,
yeah. I mean,
I'm
it's
excited.
hard with me because I just like healing, right? And I like PvP, and that's it. Like I don't. It's hard for me to be like, oh man, I really like just the insane depth of this spec or whatnot because one, that doesn't really exist in TBC or Classic, doesn't, and two, I just like doing the general like I just like healing. That's it. I don't really care how I do it usually. So that's why it's harder for me, I think, and that's why like on retail, I'm eager to just like if the guild needs me to be on a different spec, I'll just go ahead and play that different spec because it's what they need me to do or it's like the best. So I play Disc Priest. I was super scared about playing Disc Priest in retail, but I was just like, fuck it, sure, I'll go do that. But that's I don't even know why I'm talking about. That. That's just me being weird. Let's talk about more interesting stuff. Store mount. We heard about this. It's not confirmed that it's a store mount, but people are suspecting that it's a store mount. I don't think it will be. I don't imagine they would do that. That seems like a very risky move of Blizzard. But um, yeah. What are your
So what would you okay, so you said you were hoping it's not.
um?
What would you want it to be? Like,
If
how would you want it to
if
be
it were to be
released?
some sort of like mount that people can obtain somehow, probably like a promotional mount for just the release of TBC. That would probably be it. The only problem is you're giving everyone a free mount, right? Obviously, they would have to get the training and stuff for it. Um, though I I don't know if this was a mop thing. I swear it used to be if you like got a certain type of amount, it would just and you learned it, it would give you that writing. I don't know if my mind is tricking me.
That was a I want to say that was post mop. Um, because that was with the cloud serpents.
Yeah, but you needed rep for the cloud serpents.
Yes, at first you
And then I
did.
thought you also
But
needed to
if
buy flying in mop as well.
you didn't have to buy flying, or yeah, you did. You're
I
right.
don't know. That's for some reason my mind tells me that was the thing, or if you got a mount of a certain type and like learned it, it would give you that writing. Maybe my mind is tricking me. It probably is, because I can't recall when that would have happened. Um,
I think if they do release the mount as a promotional, I think it has to be a 60% given mount if it's promotional
what
like
do you
that.
mean 60? Oh, you mean 60% speed? Yeah, I thought
60%
you meant
writing
like
speed.
60% of the population gets it. And I was like, what?
They could do 100, but that is 90 less
I don't think
gold,
they would.
I believe the mount
It's
was.
hard for me. I don't think they would make it.
Or
I think
900.
they would. You would still have to get the rating. It's hard for me because I really just I don't care about store mounts, and I've never understood how people get so up in arms about it. I can understand maybe a little like you know people want gear or other mounts to look better, and it kind of sucks that they're putting more resources into store bought mounts. But at the same time, right? Like you can't no one's gonna buy recolors. I don't think. Like just no one will. No one's gonna spend $25 on a recolor. So Blizzard wants to make those mounts unique to the people who are willing to spend money on them. Sure, but then you have the side effect of other mounts are just recolors, but those mounts are free, and you just have to get some achievements and whatever. Like glory of achievements tend to be recolors in some way, and collectors are going to get those mounts anyway. They don't really care that it's a recolor because they're collectors, and usually the people who get like the glory of achievements are collectors. Um, so I've just never really, again, cared about it being a store mount. If they introduced it into TBC as a store mount, like how it is in retail, I probably still wouldn't care really. Again, because we talked, I know I talked about this with you when this came out, like a couple days ago or yesterday or whatever. But like, it's you're not. I imagine you wouldn't get the writing for it. I imagine you would still have to learn the writing, and if that's the case, like who cares, right? Like, I don't think people
Yeah.
play WoW to be like, oh man, or at least TBC. I don't think people play TBC to be like, oh man, all right, I'm ready to journey to get my mount and not do TBC content. I don't know. It just seems weird. The whole like in classic, sure, it makes sense, right? Your first mount, your very first mount, whatever. But TBC, you're most likely playing TBC for TBC. You're not playing it for the classic new experience that classic is mainly meant to be for. Um,
I do see that because it's like,
like,
okay,
can you tell me specifically, like, if they added the store mounts to it, what would be a net negative? Like, just something just purely bad that happens from it. Um, from your point of view, like from your opinion, because I know you don't really support it being a store mount. I don't either, but I'm also don't care what either way really.
I just don't think that, like, I know with TBC they're going for the some changes move now because, classic was the whole no changes, and they're going for the some changes. But I think adding in things that um words adding in something like that, like a store mount in general, just not that it isn't healthy, but it just doesn't I don't think it's going to sit right with the community. And I think it's going to make a lot of people very upset about it.
Yeah, but can you understand from the community that it's gonna upset? What about it would be upsetting?
It's a purchasable mount in an older game where they want the nostalgic feel to it, is what's going to upset them.
Okay, so it would just be just the feeling of going back in time and not having to worry about story mounts or whatever. It would just be that.
Yeah,
What if
it would
they
be
made the
the.
mount obtainable and purchasable in the store, but that store wasn't available in game? Do you think that would change anything about the experience?
What do you mean by
So
that?
like let's say how in retail, right? You can open the shop in the game and like browse through whatever thing you want to buy and buy it in game and get it without even having to close the game, right? What if they just
Right.
removed that? What if they just removed the whole in-game functionality? If you wanted to buy it, you would have to go on the website and buy it and whatever, and then you'd get it in the mail next time you log in or something. Would that ruin the experience, do you think? Or does it just having the in-game shop thing like ruin it for those players?
I think both. Because with retail and buying account wide, they're account wide. That's the thing. And I think that's a very tedious thing to try and work around to make a mount purchasable is all right, if it was account wide in TBC, so if you got this one mount on every single character, no problem. But if it's not, which in TBC nothing is, you know, account wide, how is that gonna
Well,
work?
okay,
Is
so I imagine I imagine that they would do it the same way they did in Wrath when the Celestial Seed was added. Is it would just be sent to your mailbox in every character. That's it. That's I would imagine that's how they would do
okay,
it.
so promotional wise, yes, I agree with that. But if it's purchasable, do you purchase it and it's sent to everybody?
Yeah. So
Oh, that
yeah,
okay. No, I know
when
what
the
you mean.
Celestial
So
Seed
it
came
was
out,
purchasable.
your mailboxes would get like slammed with a whole
Yeah.
bunch of different mounts. Right. I remember that's what used to happen on my other account. But yeah, I mean, I don't think it'd be that big of an issue, but I understand that other people would have an issue with it. I don't care either way. Because
I think it's
at
just
the end of the
the
day,
non-classic feel of having a purchasable amount in a game where it's more about
and
earning
aren't
in
aren't
quotes.
the mounts in TBC are the cheaper ones, right? Because they flop it. It's the mounts are the expensive one in
Yes.
classic. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. So it's even then it's even less of
But
a
they
deal
still are 100 gold.
for
But for
Epic.
okay,
For
so for the
Epic, it's
people,
100 gold.
yes. So if it happened to be epic, that's why I'm saying it. If it's a promotional, I think it has to be 60% because you're giving them 18 gold for free, which isn't a lot. But for people who have mages, I'm working on it, but have tons and tons of gold who have been playing and farming a bunch, that 100 gold is nothing. But for a lot of the people who aren't doing that and are either playing normally or just not playing a mage and don't have a farm character, that 100 gold is a lifesaver for them because that's 100 gold that would go into the mount that will actually now go into the training.
Hmm.
So that's why I would see it being a normal mount for that reason. But with the armor on the mount, it's like, all right, an armored mount, but it's a 60%. Like I don't know exactly what they're doing with that.
So you
No,
would just not be for it in general. Like you wouldn't go for it, or you wouldn't agree with it if it was added outside of being a promotional mount that's 60 speed and whatever.
yeah. If it's not that, I mean, if it's given to me, obviously I'm gonna be like, okay, sweet, I have an epic mount. I just have to get the training. I'm not gonna argue with it. But if I got to make the decision on if it does or doesn't, or how it happens, I would say no.
Okay, it's just weird to me because like we we don't want changes or whatever. People don't want changes to stuff like uh amount like that, right? Or a level boost. But people also want. I mean, I'm included. I'm not saying that people who say this are bad. Uh, no, people don't want spell batching anymore because it creates too many problems, and the game isn't like how it was way back when. And people just aren't, the way we were way back when. And we more so just find spell batching to be annoying and a problem than fun or helpful to anyone with bad internet because it just doesn't really happen anymore where that is an issue and it's an issue that needs to be fixed by spell batching. So they're going to remove it in TBC. Why is that okay when it screws over classes like Elemental Shaman, which the only reason Elemental Shaman's one shot in Classic is because of spell batching. It makes their Elemental Mastery proc twice because what you do is, do you know how Elemental Mastery works in Classic? Yeah.
Yes.
So you Elemental Mastery, pop everything, Chain Lightning, and then you press Earthshock at the exact same time, and they batch together, and it makes your Elemental Mastery treat both as one spell, so they both get crit and one shot someone. That's how it works in Classic. But because they're removing spell
So
batching, that doesn't exist in
yeah,
TBC, even though it existed in TBC way back when. So
yes. So the thing with that, because I was actually kind of curious about that myself once Soda mentioned it on his stream earlier today. Um, Blizzard, when they were releasing Classic, were not going to have spell batching because they felt it was unnecessary. Because they're like, your computers are fine now, you don't need it, blah 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 blah, and they weren't going to add it. And that's when the beginning of that no changes movement started. Was no, we want spell batching because that's how it was. And then after 2 years of playing, everyone realized, yo, spell batching sucks. We actually don't like it, and that's why they're getting rid of it in TBC. And that's why now it's some changes because obviously original TBC didn't have that.
yeah, but that's like it's still a fundamental change to the game, and such a fundamental change that it can completely screw over specs like Elemental Shaman. It almost screws over Frost Mage because of how like your Shatter works with Ice Lance and Frostbolt at the same time.
Yeah.
So it's like to me
But looking at
personally, it's like
that is
how does
like,
that make sense? How is that okay? But something like a promotional store mount that really doesn't add that much value to your account or your characters isn't okay. That you don't have to purchase, and that you realistically aren't that disadvantaged for purchasing because the mounts aren't that expensive in TBC.
I think it's just a quality of life change. Like, yes, Elemental Shaman just gets thrown into the dirt for it, but I also don't think that that was intentional when that idea was first brought to life with Elemental
Well,
Mastery.
I mean, obviously it's the beta cycle. There is still time for things to change. I don't imagine they're gonna roll back on the spell batching thing. I hope they
No.
don't because if they do, then I'm probably not gonna play TBZ, which really sucks because I want to. The only part of the biggest reason why, or the biggest reason I think why I don't play Classic is because the game just feels slow. It doesn't feel like rewarding when I press backstab, and it only happens half a second later. It doesn't. I don't like that. It's not fun to me. It's not rewarding. Getting um I don't like getting blinded and polyed. I don't like blinding someone and then also getting polyed at the same time. It doesn't make sense. That shouldn't be a thing. I don't enjoy it. It's not fun. So that's like probably the biggest reason why I don't play Classic is because that the game just feels slow. So if they removed that, if they went back on them saying no GCD or no spell batching in TBC, probably not going to play TBC, which for me really sucks. Even though it doesn't, that's not how it was way back when. It as someone who plays retail, who's only really played retail, I don't understand again why fundamental changes like the no changes or like the sorry, I'm really getting my words messed up. I don't really understand why fundamental changes like the spell batching removal is okay when it's a fundamental change to how the game works and a fundamental change to how certain specs work, but a store mount isn't okay. Like if someone is really gonna get mad about that nostalgic, true to life feel about TBC, but not be like sad about the removal of spell matching, which again completely invalidates elemental shaman in PvP. You know,
I mean, that's just one spec though.
It's not just one
but
spec. It affects Frost Mage as well. There's probably a couple
but
others.
not like you can still pull it off with Frost Mage.
You can, but it's much harder. And I would imagine the people that
Right.
are gonna get stingy about the classic thing, or like being true to how the game was back when, would also be stingy about the elemental thing, because that's not true to life. That's not how it was. Like Elemental Shaman was good in
But
PvP back then.
people dislike the spell batching, and they also dislike the mount thing from what I've seen.
I just don't understand why though. Because I would wager that again, spell batching thing is just a fundamentally more hardcore change than the mount ever could be. To me personally, that's how I see it. Um,
I mean, I don't disagree with you on that. That it's like I don't disagree with you on that, but they want to like their whole reasoning behind the classic idea or the classic era is what they're calling them now is to give you that experience of what the game was like 14 plus years ago. And while yes, they weren't going to put in spell batching in classic and the community said we want it, and they were like you don't, but all right, we'll listen, and obviously we regret that decision because spell batching is awful. I think they I think it's just kind of like a okay, we're going to stay as true to life or true to classic as we can while implementing quality of life changes,
we shouldn't even.
which
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry.
I don't think that mount should be put under that quality of life umbrella just because it's not, in quotes, the classic experience that they
Oh,
like to go that they're
okay.
seeming to
So
go
it's
for.
about to get spicy. If we're not gonna talk about, if we're gonna mention the whole quality of life thing and how mounts aren't okay, what about the level boost?
I disagree again.
You disagree with the level boost?
100%.
Really?
Yes, I think it is nice to be used as a catch-up mechanic for new accounts. I think if it was given for someone who does not have a character or does not have a character above level 20, let's say, on a classic
No,
server,
I wouldn't say 20. I would say 60. I would 100% say 60.
okay. Yeah, because then you're already going into TBC. No, that makes sense. I think if you are a level 60, you should not be able to buy it. And I'm going to stick with that because I don't think it's right to say, okay, we're going to give this to you as a catch-up mechanic, but everyone's going to get it because
Well,
it's not fair to just give it to
it's
some
not
people.
free, to be fair. I
Right.
imagine it'll be like $60, like how it is in retail. But what do you say to the guy who just wants to play TBC, and that's the only reason he's even playing one of these classic servers for is for TBC, and that guy specifically wants to play, say, Elemental Shaman because he played Elemental Shaman back then, and he wants to play it in TBC. But he didn't play Classic because he didn't enjoy Classic, and he just wasn't a part of it for one reason or another. Now you're telling that guy who's coming back, who wants to play TBC and Elemental Shaman in TBC, he can't do that because
That is why they did make the leveling easier in TBC. The XP needed per level was a lot lower than it was in
it
Classic.
was, but that guy still can't play with everyone else. He's most likely going to be behind by like a few weeks, if not a month. He's just gonna be behind,
I mean,
and that's not.
if he's on a newer account, I'm okay with it. But for someone who has a 60, they should not be able to purchase it.
See, I'm even having a hard time agreeing with that because like Blizzard kind of killed Classic. They really butchered it at the beginning. Um, and I would imagine it turned a lot of people off from playing it after hitting 60. With stuff like the world buff thing, stuff like layering lasting way longer than it should have, stuff like that one server that's 99-1 horde to alliance. Like, stuff got messed up real bad, and I would imagine it turned a lot of people off from playing. I still think those people should get some sort of compensation for that. I know they can't control what Blizzard does, and Blizzard kind of can't control stuff like that 99-1 server. I don't see it as that big of a deal, especially because you're not playing TBC for Classic. You're playing TBC for TBC most likely. But who cares if they go level 58 and skip through all the Classic content, because most likely those people were just gonna boost anyway, which is what I'm doing, to be fair.
But also, with boosting, it's not as efficient as it is in Classic. Like, yes, Paladins can do it, and they do it very well, but at the rate at which they can kill mobs compared to how mages can kill mobs, it doesn't compare.
I don't know if that's true, to be honest. I've never seen videos of, like, you know, I would have to do my research to challenge you on that, to be honest. I don't know.
I
My
I
brain
have looked
tells
at
me it's
it,
more efficient as a paladin because they can pull more. They just don't die, and they could just go wherever they want with the mobs. As far as
but
I
their
know,
consecrate doesn't do as much damage.
it doesn't. But they
Is
also don't have
the
to
thing
run
with it.
around and try and frost nova, and like they don't have to worry about mana because they just don't die.
I think it just depends on the pull, but yeah, I understand.
I don't know if that's true or not. I would have to see like polls of paladins doing it. Um,
It's very um I mean it's the similar concept because like I know you've seen me do mage pulls. It's a very similar concept. It's just they're standing on top of you and you're putting down
Yeah,
consecrate
you're
over and over
gathering them
again.
all. I imagine you're running around a corner, set the LOS, and all gather onto you or something, and then you just consecrate and let them kill themselves um, with your Sporgar shield, and they just die and fall over. Um, so I don't know. I don't think the level boost would be that big of a deal, especially because I mean, obviously I'm gonna use it for sure. I'm gonna buy it. Especially because it's one time too. It's not even like it's honestly basically giving someone a second chance. Second what? It's giving someone a second chance at playing TBC. Maybe they didn't like the spec that they chose in Classic, right? Or the class they chose in Classic, and they would like to, play TBC as the spec that they played in TBC that they enjoyed. I think it's neat. If it was spam buyable, that would probably be a problem, but it's a one-time thing.
Probably. Sorry, continue.
What?
You said probably would be a problem. Like it definitely wouldn't or would be a problem.
Oh, I thought you were making a joke about the what thing. Um
Oh no.
yeah. So yeah, I don't see that big of an issue with it. Mostly
But
because
I am a nostalgia freak.
oh, I am too, 100%. I'm probably the most nostalgic loser you're ever gonna talk to when it comes to something like TBC. Um, I legit cream myself over thinking about
Okay.
doing dailies and farming eels and farming blood elves in Terracar Forest. Um, but stuff like that, I personally cannot understand. But if it's the majority opinion, then who am I to contest it?
I just that's just how I've always felt about the idea of changing that part of the game.
So
I've always been just like keep it as true as you can. If things have to change because of, for example, spell batching, which I agree with the change, like getting rid of it because as you, I mean, you agree with me on that. It's bad. No one likes it. Besides elemental shamans, I will make that exception. But I just think that adjusting the game to make the gameplay feel smoother and feel better, that is one thing. But to add things that are unnatural to that state of the game shouldn't be added.
I, the
And
problem with what you're
that's
saying is just it's very vague. Because you could argue spell batching was very natural to the state of the game, and removing it is very unnatural for the state of the game back then.
fair.
So it eh.
No, I understand. I I mean, I was vague with it, but like the mount and the boost, I don't agree with because I think if you're going to play TBC, classic comes in hand with that. It's a direct it's a direct connection to it. Like yes, I understand if people just want to play TBC, but if you want to play TBC, you got to play classic
I guess
is
maybe you could
my
make
mindset
some
with
sort
it.
of argument that like the mount and the level thing affects everyone. Meanwhile, like the spell batching thing only seriously affects people that play specs like Elemental Shaman and Frost Mage. It just sucks because those people still get affected, like pretty severely. I know you play Frost Mage and you say you can still do it, but it is going to affect you whether you agree with it or not. And it does
But
just affect you negatively. It just does. There's no argument for
yes,
it or against it either. It does affect you negatively. So
but I also that isn't something we've experienced since, TBC or Wrath maybe, where we were used to it with spell batching.
yeah, but
So me
that
going
doesn't
into
matter though.
this,
It because you can make the same argument for the mount thing. It's not the way it was back then.
no, I'm not saying that. I'm saying like I'm going into Burning Crusade Classic without spell batching. I have never done the Frost Nova Frostbolt Ice Lance with spell batching. So if I can do it,
Wait, did you just say we're
it's
going
not
into
an
classic
issue.
without spell batching?
Classic TBC.
We have spell batching though.
We were going into TBC without it. There will not be spell
Yeah,
batching in
yeah,
TBC. That's what I'm saying. I can't practice the Ice Lance thing right now because I don't have a Frost Elemental or Ice Lance. You get what I'm
yeah.
saying?
But I, I
So I can't be like, okay, I can do it with spell batching, and then I can't do it without. I won't know.
no, you obviously you won't know, but I'm just going off of what people have said. And what people have said is it is harder. It's what Soda said too on his stream earlier today. I trust him, you know, because he actively plays TBC private servers. I would imagine it's harder to do stuff like the shattered frostbolt thing. At least as like what's the word? As consistently. Now, but that doesn't help the case with elemental shamans though. It just doesn't because they've been doing it all of classic with spell batching. So going into there without spell batching is gonna kill the spec.
I mean, I don't think a spec should be able to one shot anyways,
But
but
it doesn't matter. It does not matter. That's how the spec was back then. That's just how it was. And if you're gonna make the argument that you want things to be like how it was back then, you know that's one of the things that just is the way it was back then. Soda made the argument that it could you could just make the spell batching happen only for elemental mastery, which could be neat, but they could also just they could give elemental mastery like 2 charges maybe.
I think that's the easiest way. Is give Elemental Mastery 2 charges. I don't think
But then
putting
that could
spell
change
batching
like the
just.
whole rotation of it.
I mean, yeah, and it could, but I think even enhancement shaman or elemental shamans would agree that spell batching is not good.
For the whole of the game, no, but for elemental, it's good, and
For specifically that one
it's not.
scenario where you're
But
using
it's
that,
not just that one scenario. That's like all of elemental shaman in PvP. It's not just like a
yeah, just
fringe
for
thing.
PvP,
That's like
but
the only reason you ever bring an elemental in PvP is because they can one shot.
what's the cooldown on
I think it's
elemental
like three
mastery?
minutes.
Okay,
It's
so every 3 minutes you can have spell batching for what, two abilities? Like I just don't think there's a big enough
I
argument for that for them to care.
the way I see it is so there's a change they made in retail for fire mages where essentially whenever you combust, it automatically puts down a rune of power. And if you don't know what Rune of Power is, it was a talent where it's like a half-second cast, and it puts down a little rune under you that you have to stand on, and you get like a 20% damage buff or something, or 15% damage buff. I don't remember what the exact number is. So you would always want to have the rune down. One of the things that was really annoying before Shadowlands happened was you would have to cast the Rune of Power and then go into your rotation. In Shadowlands, they made it so whenever you combust, it automatically puts down a Rune of Power. You don't have to cast it or worry about it. It's something along those lines. So think of it like this. Imagine before Shadowlands, your combust automatically put down a Rune of Power, automatically gave you that 15% damage buff. Now, going into Shadowlands, they remove that. And you lose like a ton of damage off of your combust because of that. That's essentially what's happening, except it's tenfold because you can still do damage during your combust and not miss out on 50% of the damage in your combust because of that half-second cast time or whatever, right? With Elemental
Yeah.
Shaman, that's like completely, it's gutting the amount of damage that they do. It's gutting. I don't know how else to describe this other than it's the only reason you bring the Elemental Shaman in PvP is for that burst window, is for that burst one-shotting thing. If an Elemental Shaman can't do that, they're worthless. They're completely useless. Because that's the whole reason you brought them before. It's not a matter of it's every 3 minutes, well, not a big deal. It's a matter of that's why you bring one. Is for the every 3 minutes thing. So when you kill the every 3 minutes thing, and that's the only reason you bring them, then it is kind of a big deal.
And the class is like pointless. Yeah. I mean, I understand that, and I understand that they thrived off of spell batching. I think you can give them 2 charges, and I know that might change the rotation, but that's on, I want to say, the community to figure out.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, there's still time to figure it out. It is beta. I just think it's an interesting discussion. Um, and I just have a hard time seeing people be like, no storm outs can't be. Nope, this is gonna kill the game, ruin the game for me. I'm gonna unsub or whatever. But they're okay with stuff like that. I don't know. It's just weird to me personally.
I mean, I don't think, I mean, obviously the storm out's not going to kill the game. It's going to make Blizzard a ton of money, yes, but I don't think that that is something that's needed as a storm out. I don't think storm out should be added to Classic, and that's just my take on that specific.
I'm not arguing for or against it. I'm just arguing for why do people care that much. I personally just don't understand. Like, if like
It doesn't affect
like
them. It
it
really doesn't.
really, to me personally, it means literally nothing. It doesn't change
It's
anything about my
just
experience in
the
TBC. It just won't.
I think it's almost just the, oh, it wasn't earned kind of thing. Because yes, like I feel like that's the same ideology. That's the word, with the boost. You didn't earn it, and that's just their take on it.
What if they give that mount to the people that buy the level boost? What? Why are you laughing? What if they give it to the people that buy level boost? I'm serious. Like, not for the people, not like they get it on all the characters, but that's the mount that they give the person that you boosted, because they already said they're gonna give you level 60, um, like, uh,
That okay.
mount speed.
I mean, that's killing one issue, but I mean, I still have an issue with the boost, but we've already been over that. So, how do you think layering's gonna work though?
They're gonna have they have to have so many layers. I
Like a ridiculous
Yeah,
amount too.
it's an unbelievable amount. I mean, I don't think there's anything we can do about it. I personally, I agree with it. I think most people agree with it, to be honest. It's just the problem with Classic is the layers went on for so long, that it made people quit or something. Yeah, I didn't play Classic, so I don't know what the whole issue was. But
So the
I heard people
biggest issue
complain
with
that it
it,
happened too long, and because of it happening too long, it created issues somehow. Um,
the issues were layer hopping.
Layer hopping was one, but I also thought it just made people distant, and it really took you out of the game because
Um,
you were just layer hopping
yeah.
to like
Well,
farm nodes
a
and
big
stuff.
thing, yeah, it was a layer hopping to farm nodes to get mats faster, which again, gold inflation. And another thing was layer hopping for buffs. So you would be able to, like, I understand world buffs are only like, I mean, they don't stack obviously, but it would be like, oh, okay, on my layer, I just logged in, first time on today. On my layer, Oni doesn't pop for another 2 hours because it just went off before I logged on. Oh, but your layer, it pops in 5 minutes. So you invite me over, I'll get the buff and come back to mine. Which doesn't sound like a big deal, but it's just it I think that honestly brought in the whole, like, it cascaded the world buff meta because it was like, okay, if you can get your world buffs before raid, obviously it helps. It's not that big of a deal, but it created that, okay, I'm selling, or I'm 3 minutes from now, I'm putting up Oni on layer 3. So everyone would hop over to layer 3 to refresh that buff. And then 20 minutes later, layer 2 gets it. So people would hop over to layer
Wow,
2,
that
refresh
sounds
the buff
really
again.
gross.
Yeah. And that's why that world buff meta was such a big deal earlier in Classic. Because you were, like, if you knew everyone, like, if you knew which layers were which and you had people in different layers, you were able to figure out when the buffs were and be able to continuously keep up a buff. And it was just it was
I'm
disgusting.
fine. I'm all for layering. I understand it just makes the experience smoother for pretty much everyone. It makes it smoother for Blizzard. It makes it smoother for the players. I just don't think if that's the case, it shouldn't last that long. I just don't know how Blizzard gauges when it's an okay time for them to have it versus not have it.
I think it's gonna last longer in TBC than it did in
Uh,
Classic.
I think if they
But
do layer, I wonder if they can make it like zone specific because like Hellfire Peninsula is gonna have to be layered for a long time, like a very long time. Um,
like the higher zones wouldn't need to as long.
well, maybe it depends on when the average player base gets to those higher level zones.
Yeah.
They most
I
likely
think
have
like
some
you
sort
said,
of what's the word? There's a word for it, heuristic or something to figure out like when all that stuff happens. Um, and I think they should be able to plan accordingly, at least better than it seems how they did with Classic. Um,
I think with Classic it was a, like, obviously they didn't
I
want to
mean, it
keep
was their
layering
first
it.
time doing it too, so I'm gonna cut them some
Right.
slack on layering in Classic because it was their first time doing it, new technology or whatever.
But I think with TBC it is gonna last longer just because of you're taking the population of all the, dozens of zones we have in Azeroth of where people were, where they kept layering into 6. So I think it is going to last longer. I hope it doesn't last. I know it's not going to last the entire time, but I think it's going to last for longer than Classic did just because of the amount of people going into such a much smaller
I'm
area.
gonna get like, I don't care as long as I don't have to top layers to farm mushrooms in Zangarmarsh. I'm all for it, man.
I
I
mean, we won't be doing that. We're going to be dungeon
no, we're gonna be
farming.
dungeon farming, but like if I'm doing herbalism or something on a character or whatever reason, I'm farming those
Oh yeah.
mushrooms or whatever, those flowers or something that spawns in Zangarmarsh, because at some point you're gonna need to do that. I think I would rather not feel compelled to, you know, layer hop to search for those. That would not be fun. I wouldn't want to do that. So hopefully that doesn't happen. Hopefully they have some sort of.
I mean, that just depends. I think that just depends on how, I don't want to say dedicated, but like how dedicated you are to getting that up as fast
I
as
will
possible.
100% be as dedicated as it possibly can.
All right, guess you're layer hopping.
Well, it it depends on when they close layering and how they'd handle it.
Right.
Um,
But if we're trying to level as fast as we think we are and get to 70 and get our reps up as fast as we think we are, I think you're going to be doing it a lot sooner before layering closes.
Probably. I mean, and if that's the case, I'm going to do it. Am I going to enjoy doing it? Probably not. But I'm a DGen, and that's how I roll. So I'm gonna do it, whether I like it or not. Um,
So on to leveling. So in um in the beta right now, dungeon XP has been significantly lower, but it doesn't look like it's been nerfed. As in like or I mean a bug. It just looks like dungeon leveling is significantly slower than classics
I
dungeon
don't know
leveling was.
how you would get that it doesn't look like a bug. I I would imagine it's a bug, unless they've stated otherwise. I'm pretty sure it's just a bug.
Well, that's just in comparison to classic dungeon leveling.
Yeah, but you said I'm just saying that you said it doesn't look like it's a bug. How do you know that?
Well, in comparison to the other XP bugs that were in the game or that are in beta right now, with the down to 40% XP gain, I thought we saw.
I don't know the exact numbers. I've heard 40%, like people are only getting like 60% or something. I don't know the exact numbers. But if you're talking about like what if they nerfed dungeon leveling, I hope they didn't.
I mean, I think it is just slower because of XP, um, XP needed and XP per
Because like
mob.
those dungeons are pretty hard. Blood Furnace is going to be a pain in the butt. It's going to suck.
Oh, I can't wait.
Especially because there's like these creatures, and they still do this in retail. I think to a lesser degree though. There are these mobs at the bottom, like right before Kill the Breaker, the last boss. Big Felguard guys. They just one shot you. It's as if you're the
Yeah,
tank. They just insta kill you. It's how they work in retail, and it's kind of how they. It's definitely how they work in TBC. Um, those dungeons are hard.
not only those, but the tacticians earlier in the instance with the
I
bombs.
think that might just be a retail thing.
No, those hit for like 70% health.
Oh, and TBC. Okay, well, I mean, I
Yeah.
haven't done it in TBC, so I wouldn't know, but I believe it 100%. Um, so I definitely don't think they should nerf the XP from those if they're actually challenging and people are willing to spam them like degens for 48 hours straight to 70.
Oh, we're spamming them for rep
Well, we're mainly
because
doing it for the ease of leveling and the XP. The rep is more so just a bonus, I think.
well, my thought process when we discussed this was because of the rep. Because we're going to need rep for our attunements. And instead of capping ourselves. So, quests get you partway through Honored from the start of. If you walked in through the Dark Portal and you just quested straight through Hellfire, you would be somewhere in Honored for Thrallmar.
Well, I thought we were doing this primarily because we don't have to worry about other people and we get gear and it's brand dead. It's the same thing over and over. And yeah, that's pretty much it. The rep thing is nice, but it other outside of that, it's just the most efficient way of leveling is because we don't have to worry about other people, don't have to worry about mob spawns, don't have to worry about gearing because we're getting gear as we're doing the dungeons. Um, that's how I saw it personally. The rep thing is nice, but like I don't know.
Um, I mean, I guess it's a combination, especially
It's definitely I
at
think just a mix of
release.
all that stuff rather than just one is better than the other or whatever.
But the rep thing is
Rep thing is important.
definitely
I'm not saying it isn't. I'm
yeah.
not saying it isn't.
No, I but to me when we first talked about it, that was my focus was reputation because farming Blood Furnace, 20 times at level 60 to 62 as we're leveling is a lot easier than going into God, what's that instance called? With Black Hand at the end.
Blackhand or Blade Fist?
Blade
Shattered
Fist, sorry.
Halls.
Shattered Halls. Farming Blood Furnace is just 10 times easier than doing Shattered Halls. And you would be doing, like, you still have to do Shattered Halls a little bit at the end because after doing Dungeons Till Honored and then questing, you still have to get it to Exalted, so you still have to farm it out for a little bit. But it's better farming it Revered to Exalted instead of Honored to Exalted. So it's just bonus rep that we're going to need for attunements that we would have missed out on if we decided to quest. And on top of mob spawns, other people being there, and just dealing with all that, it just makes, I think, our lives a hell of a lot easier.
Yeah. I mean, it would really suck if they nerfed the leveling from dungeons.
I mean, in my honest opinion, I think we still do it.
No, I mean, we're definitely still gonna do it. I mean, it's probably, again, just given how launches work, I'm pretty sure it's still just gonna be more efficient than waiting for mob spawns. So,
Right.
yeah, I'm pretty sure it's just a bug though. I don't think there's any way right now to confirm whether or not it's a bug or not. Like, unless they've said otherwise, I just don't think it
I mean,
is.
I hope
Blizzard
so.
did release a
I
blue
hope.
post stating a whole bunch of the bugs they found, so I can check that. But I don't think it's confirmed whether or not that is or isn't a bug. At least not the dungeon
Okay.
leveling thing. I'm pretty sure the the quest, just the mob XP thing, that is a bug. I'm pretty sure. I've
Yeah.
heard a lot of people say that, not just Soda or whoever. But
I mean, that just does sound like a bug because, from what I've been seeing, it was like quests that are supposed to give you like 10 to 12k XP. We're only giving them like 4k.
I mean, we watched Soda today. He was questing through all of Zangarmarsh, and he really did not. He barely got a level out of it. Out of like six,
Yeah. It was what,
out of
5
like
hours and he got a
six,
level.
7 or 8 hours. Which I mean, I don't think that was par for the course back. And maybe back then because people were slower, didn't know what they were doing, internet, whatever. But nowadays, that sounds like a lot of time for one level. Like a lot.
Oh yeah. But definitely,
When you were just questing and killing mobs, that sounds like a lot.
oh yeah. But it was definitely a I was watching, I think I was watching Peo before Soda started streaming this morning, and it was like, it was a, like, he turned in 2 quests. One of them gave him 12,000 experience or 10,000 experience, and then he turned in the other one and it gave him like 4k. And he was like, "What the heck? Like, that's not how that is supposed to work." Because it was a quest that's similar in difficulty, not like, "Hey, go talk to this person and go kill 6 of these mobs" kind of thing. It was a quest that should have given you the same amount of XP.
But I mean, outside of all that, I think I'm definitely optimistic. So I mean, we'll see what happens.
Just hoping for the best with everything that beta will introduce into the game for us, or I mean, not introduce into the game, but all the kinks are fixed with the
Yeah,
game,
I mean, I
I should
imagine
say.
they will be. I imagine beta will sort itself out. I imagine there's going to be enough community feedback on one issue or another, and they'll make changes accordingly. So I'm still optimistic. Even if I'm still gonna play it, probably more than I did Classic. Even if it's not,
You better play more than Classic.
yeah, I intend to play it more than Classic. I intend to play it more than Retail, if that says anything. So
We will see.
we shall see. Before we wrap this up, I do want to say, uh, we are going to be starting a Discord that I should have linked in the description shortly. So if you guys are interested, feel free to join. It's just a little community Discord thing, sort of in preparation for TBC, mainly WoW stuff, but obviously you can talk about whatever you want in there within reason. Okay, no gamer words or anything. Don't do that. So yeah, just check the description, and yeah.
Deuces.